Hi, I'm Helen Bauer, and this is the Heart of Hospice podcast. The Heart of Hospice podcast is your source for compassionate and informative discussions about hospice and end-of-life care. I'm a certified hospice and palliative care nurse with over 15 years of experience. Whether you're a caregiver, someone with a serious illness, or you simply need to know more about hospice care, this podcast is for you. Join me as we explore all the aspects of hospice, from the details of caregiving to the emotional and spiritual dimensions of end-of-life journeys. For more resources and to connect with me, visit theheartofhospice.com and find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Keep listening for today's episode.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
This episode is being sponsored by bkbooks.com. BK Books helps care teams and families understand what to expect at the end of life. Created by Barbara Carnes, these trusted booklets and videos explain the physical and emotional changes of dying with warmth and clarity. Whether you're guiding others or caring for someone you love, BK Books brings understanding that eases fear and fosters peace. Explore our compassionate resources at bkbooks.com. This episode is being sponsored by Lasting Remembrance. Lasting Remembrance knows that sometimes words aren't enough. If you're struggling to find the right thing to say to someone who's grieving, a memorial blanket offers comfort and meaning. A memorial blanket will become a permanent keepsake to be treasured for years to come. Visit lastingremembrance.com today to create a keepsake that honors a memory. Use the code Heart of Hospice to receive a 10% discount.
It's time to get back to the basics of hospice care with hospice nurse Shelley Henry in a discussion about what to expect when death happens at home. My guest, Shelley Henry, is a certified hospice and palliative nurse with over 20 years in the end-of-life care industry. She's the president of the Amity Group, which is a staffing firm that focuses exclusively on hospice. She consistently shares her wealth of knowledge and experience with other hospice nurses on her weekly Tips for Hospice Nurses videos that she shares across the various social media platforms. You can find Shelley at amitystaffing.com and find her videos on LinkedIn. As part of our conversation about a death event, Shelley and I talked about how a hospice staff should be there to support the patient and the family, especially the nurse daily, in the last weeks to days, but that a hospice team can't be expected to be there around the clock. And it's quite possible that the hospice will not have anybody there in the house when that death actually occurs. We talked about what does happen when the death happens. A hospice nurse should come to the patient's home, wherever they call home, wherever their residence is, to pronounce the death of the patient. We also discussed the way hospice staff should be providing dignified care for the patient and the family at the time of death. It should not be done as quickly as possible. It's not a race. You're not going for a record to have the shortest time ever at a death call. Shelley also describes things that she does to prepare a body for transport to the funeral home, and she shares how she offers bereavement support to families as well. We talked about the medical equipment and how it needs to be picked up by the equipment service and how that should happen in a respectful and considerate way for that family. We also discuss when the funeral home should or can be called to transport the body, and how the timing of that is really important for people's grief experience and their hospice experience. So this is a really informative conversation, takes such a really deep look, very focused look into what a death event should look like. I think there's a lot to be gained from this, so I hope you'll stick with it. There's a lot to learn. Shelley, welcome back to this Back to Basics episode. Thanks for being with me.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be doing this one with you too.
This is a really good one because you and I are about to get worked up.
Yeah.
We both feel really passionately about how the death of a hospice patient is handled. And so I know you might hear us get a little rowdy on this one.
Be rowdy. Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. So we're talking about what to expect when you're providing care or you're receiving the care when a death occurs in the home. We're also going to touch base on what if your home is a facility like a nursing home or an assisted living, and also if a patient dies inside the hospital in GIP care. But most of it's going to be focused on when someone dies in the home. So the first thing we want to make really clear: will hospice have someone there when my person is dying and at the time of death? And the answer is maybe, maybe not, and probably not.
Yeah. We don't know. We try to be there and we want to be there, but a lot of times we're not. We're not either. It happens suddenly and we haven't had the advanced warning, which sometimes we know, or it can be a very long process too. Some people don't realize is that the actual actively dying process looks different on every patient. So it could be a 2 or 3 hour, or it could be a week long process. So
Right.
we're there to support, and you definitely can call when things change and we'll be out there, but we may not be sitting there with you. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. I've had patients that ask me that during the admission. Will you be
Yes.
here? Will someone be here with my husband or wife when I'm dying? Such a hard question, right? Because what they're looking for is reassurance. Is there going to be additional support when things get really dicey? And the answer to that is no. Typically, hospice agencies do not have somebody that sits at the bedside in what we call vigiling to sit vigil with a patient.
They do not. They do not. But if your hospice company is preparing well and increasing the visits as they should be towards the end of life, the dying process is going to be very calm and peaceful.
Yes.
If you're having anything but calm and peaceful, you need to be calling the hospice agency and having the on-call nurse come out there with you and be with you.
Right. So even if the symptoms are all managed and the dying process is very comfortable for the patient, not everybody needs morphine. Not everybody has shortness of breath. Not everybody has agitation or delirium. For some people, it's very calm. Your hospice agency should still be checking in daily.
Absolutely.
Yes, especially in that last week or so. Especially in that last week or so, you should see a nurse daily. And then the chaplain and the social workers, those visits should be kicked up as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But can you expect somebody to stay at the bedside? No. That's not a realistic view of hospice care in the United States these days. Sadly enough, I think that's a big change. I think when hospice first started in the 80s, when the Medicare benefit first started, a lot of those folks were volunteers to begin with. And
Right.
they did stay at the bedside, which is an amazing way to take care of someone who's dying. But it's just not something we do these days.
Right. Nobody has the staff for it anymore. Back in the day when I started, we team nursed. So it was me, an LPN, and a CNA. And we had the same group of patients, but we only had 10 patients. So when we had somebody actively, one of us was always there with them. But that is just not the reality of the world anymore. Everybody on the team has got so many patients and so much care that they have to be doing out there.
Yeah. Nurse caseload is probably close to twice that these days.
It is.
Anywhere from 15 to 20, which is too much. which is too much, but it does happen. We just want people to be clear on what to expect, right? I think that's important. So when the death occurs, if there's nobody from the hospice agency there, what's supposed to happen? What's that caregiver supposed to do?
This is so important. This is so important. What you are supposed to do is call the hospice, and they will come out and take care of everything for you. If you call 911 or any other service like that, they're going to come in as if your patient was a full code, and they're not going to treat your patient like a hospice patient. They're going to do all of the stuff and try to take them to the hospital and do CPR and do everything. Even patients that are DNR, y'all have seen this so many times. The ambulance people say, we have the DNR on the refrigerator. They're like, you called us, so we're obligated to perform life-saving measures. So you don't want to go through all of that.
No.
You've been on hospice, you've done the whole journey for the reason. So when your patient passes away, or even when you think they are, you're not quite sure, call hospice, and the nurse will go out and take care of everything. You don't have to worry about anything after that. Just call hospice.
Right. It's sort of a one-stop shopping. You call the hospice agency, non-emergency stuff, right? Because you're not interested in emergency stuff. You move way past that. And then the hospice nurse is going to come out. They may send a social worker and the chaplain out. They may send an aide out. Whoever can get to you first. And then, of course, whoever needs to be there legally to do a pronouncement of death, right? But the hospice team is there to support you. They're going to walk you through what needs to happen. They're going to take care of your person. They're going to help you with the business side of things, who needs to be called, what needs to be disposed of or cleaned up, who needs to be notified. That's all part of what the hospice team is going to do for you. And while they're doing that, they're going to be providing grief support and meet you wherever that is. Even in hospice, sometimes the death is unexpected, like you were saying. Sometimes things happen very quickly. And sometimes we're waiting for days and expecting a death any minute. And so nobody's surprised about it.
Right.
But the grief can look the same, regardless of how fast or slow things have happened. So grief support is should absolutely be provided during a death visit. If you're a hospice provider and that's not something you do, or you're saying, okay, I got 10 minutes in this house with a drive-by death call. I've actually heard that expression. Oh, yes. It's too bad you can't hear us roll our eyes, because that should never happen.
Let me tell you what I saw the other day that I'm still so upset about this. I was in social media in a hospice nurse social media group, and the nurses were bragging about how fast they could go do a death visit.
No.
And one of them had it down to 8 minutes.
No.
I can't even get out of my car and in the door in 8 minutes.
Shelley.
How do you confirm no signs of life in that amount of time?
How do you support a caregiver?
You don't. I can't. 8 minutes. 8 minutes. So yeah, this is my I get so upset about this, because I feel like, as hospice people, I feel an extreme amount of responsibility to that person's body, that I am staying there with their body, and I'm making sure that everything that happens to that body is done in the most dignified and respectful way that it can be done, all the way until the funeral home people have taken it and put it into the hearse or whatever they're driving these days.
Yeah.
But I just feel an intense responsibility for that. And the fact that people are running in, checking for signs of life and leaving, and proud of that, I cannot begin. That just is so upsetting to me.
That's disgusting.
It is.
That is disgusting. I don't think I've ever been this vocal on the podcast before, but that's horrible. And the fact that that's a hospice nurse that's proud of that.
Proud of it.
Yeah, this is not your personal record, your PR. You're not a runner.
Yeah.
No, it's not a competition to see how short you can make a visit for a death. That's hideous. Oh my gosh. Wow. I feel like we should do video because they're gestures I want to do. That's awful. Inappropriate gestures. Wow.
And the poor family. So, I mean, but when you're with a hospice and the nurse, this is not every hospice either. So please don't think that it is. But
True.
I don't know where these nurses were, who they worked for, but I am hearing it more and more that I don't stay, or, nurses having those discussions. Do you stay until the body's picked up? Well, absolutely. People are scared to be with a dead body. I mean, they don't see it every day like we do. And so we forget how scary that can be for some people. So I always stay, even if it's not for the patient, which I feel responsibility towards, but for the family too, just they're comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think we have to really read the room. Some families are going to want us to sit with them and provide direct support. Sometimes I feel like I'm intruding in the family's grieving, so I'll stay to the side, but I'm always going to stay there and always be available for whatever they need, and to be available to help the funeral home. Because I will tell you something else we're seeing that we didn't used to see is funeral homes are short-staffed too. Like, everybody's doing a lot of this intentional understaffing, and they'll send one person out there. And it takes more than one person to transfer the body to the stretcher and all of that kind of stuff. And I don't want the family having to do that. I don't want that to be the last memory of their loved one. So I am going to stay, and I usually kind of direct the family on where to go when we're going to be transferring the body and close the door. So, because, sometimes things happen. The stretcher can break and different things like that I've had happen.
Yeah.
And we don't want the family in there with that. So that's another reason it's really important to stay. So you're in charge of all of that. You're in charge of the last memory that family has of their loved one. And that is critically important.
Well, it's also the last memory, the only last impression you get to make upon this family while that person is still there. I also think, in my experience, that the movement of that body out of the home, especially if this is where that person has been ill for a long time, especially if that's a home where they have lived for a long time, a family home maybe where they raise their children, that last physical move of that body can be a huge grief trigger for the family that's there at the bedside. That is a momentous thing. I think it's right up there with the death and with maybe seeing your person embalmed, things like that. Lowering the casket into the ground. Those are huge grief moments.
Yeah.
And this is what we are there for. It is not just our job to go in and say, this person's dead, and call the funeral home and leave.
Right. Because and then a lot of people are like, what do I do with the funeral home? They don't know. So we have to help give direction on preparing for that.
Right.
They're going to want this. And I always ask the funeral home, what do you want them to have? And what do we need to get together, and get all of that together with them and make it a loving process, kind of a part of things that they can do for their patient, and getting the patient to the stretcher and giving the family one more final goodbye before they go out is really important. And making sure, like directing, I will have the family members moving cars and things like that. So I know it's a smooth out the door process. I've seen some stuff. And so I make sure that everything is set up so that it's smooth and it's nice. And then it's so important to go back in and set up the room and clean the room, get rid of all of the stuff, all of the trash, everything out of the room, make the bed, put it down, put the pillow back on the bed. I work as an amputee nurse, so I don't work for one specific hospice agency, but I've seen agencies that have these beautiful things they'll do. There'll be little things that'll go on the pillow, like a little Christmas ornament that might be a little dove or something like that goes on the pillow, because that patient, the family is going to be walking past that room and that person's not there anymore. You want to make it as lovely and peaceful as you can. And, in the old days, we could call the DME company, the equipment company, and they would come immediately and pick up the supplies. But I will tell you, it's not like that anymore.
Ugh.
I argue and I go
Shelley.
round and round with them. If it happens on a Friday, most of them do not pick up that equipment until Monday or Tuesday. They definitely don't come out the same day anymore.
That's super problematic for a lot of people because those hospital beds are very big.
Yeah.
And in my experience, I had a lot of homes where those beds had to be put into a living room or a common living space because the
Right.
bedrooms could not accommodate a hospital bed, or the spouse was sleeping in the bed and that
Right.
bed couldn't be busted down and moved to make room for a hospital bed because there was somebody else sleeping in it. When my father-in-law died, he died on a weekend. And the DME company was called, and when the guy came out, the medical equipment companies contract with hospice agencies. They do not work for the agency directly.
Right.
Right? So he comes out and he says, we don't usually do that. And I'm like, that's not okay. My father-in-law died in the living room
Mhm.
inside a townhouse. So there was nowhere else for the family to gather except in the room where this hospital bed was. And it was huge. The furniture had been moved. And so when this guy, when my mother-in-law spoke with him and he's like, we don't usually do that. I'm like, yeah, you do.
You-
Yeah, don't even tell me you're not coming to get this bed.
I just not that long ago just was so upset and going round and round with the DME company. And they're like, we're not doing, they hung up on me.
That's just horrible service.
And they were like, no, that's just how it is now. And I'm like, really? Because it was the same thing. All of this, a massive amount of equipment was right in the middle of the home. So I stayed and I made it as neat as I possibly could and made the bed and put the equipment under the bed and just tried to make it as pleasant of a place as I possibly could because they were not picking that up until Monday.
So here's what I will tell you. If you are listening and you work for a hospice agency, your DME, your durable medical equipment company that you're contracted with should absolutely make themselves available 24/7 to either bring out equipment for a patient that's struggling. Oxygen gets taken out at 2 a.m. when a patient goes into a crisis. When a patient dies, you come and get that stuff immediately according to what the family wants. If they're not going to be there because they're going to the funeral home or they just need space, that's great. But you better be prepared with a company that will come out whenever the need happens.
Yeah.
And if you are a family with a loved one, liked one person, whoever it is, on hospice, and that DME company tells you, or the hospice agency tells you that over the weekend or after hours, their equipment company does not come out, have a conversation with them. Be an advocate. Be a voice. Because this whole thing, this is just how it is. That is not okay. Don't let that be how it is for you.
I'm so glad you said that because you're such an advocate for the people because that is what I actually told these people. I said, if y'all call, they might listen. They're not
Yes.
listening to me. They did call and they did go out. It was different, but yeah. Yeah. And some people just at that point don't have the bandwidth to do that. So it is upsetting that it's changing, that our level, we need to keep having these conversations because we need to
Yes.
keep hospice care where it's supposed to be.
Right. And I think people need to know what good hospice care looks like, whether you're giving it or you're
Yes.
getting it. So important. I hope you're enjoying this episode. We're going to pause for just a minute. My guest has more to share.
This episode is being sponsored by Lasting Remembrance. When a loved one passes away, finding the right way to honor their memory matters. Whether you yourself are grieving or you're looking for a way to comfort someone else who is, you want something meaningful. That's where Lasting Remembrance comes in. We specialize in memorial blankets, beautiful, personalized keepsakes that blend seamlessly into everyday life and keep the loved one present. Choose from a variety of designs, whether you want one customized with meaningful text or a photo of a cherished memory, or a timeless symbol such as a cardinal or a tree. Each blanket is thoughtfully created, professionally produced, and shipped directly to you. Sometimes words aren't enough. When you're struggling to find the right thing to say to someone who's grieving, a memorial blanket offers comfort and meaning, a lasting reminder of their loved one. Unlike flowers that fade, the blankets become a permanent keepsake to be treasured for years to come. Lasting Remembrance can help create a meaningful gift or give you comfort during difficult times. Visit lastingremembrance.com today to create a keepsake that honors a memory. Use the code Heart of Hospice to receive a 10% discount. lasting remembrance, comfort they can hold on to. When someone you care about is nearing the end of life, it can be hard to know what to expect. BK Books is here to help families, caregivers, and professionals find comfort through understanding. Created by hospice nurse and end-of-life educator Barbara Carnes, these simple, trusted booklets and videos explain what happens when a person is dying, the changes that occur, the signs you can expect, and ways to bring comfort and provide care. With clear, compassionate information, BK Books helps you face one of life's hardest moments with confidence instead of fear. Whether you're supporting a loved one or guiding a family, these resources make a real difference. Resources from BK Books have helped hundreds of thousands of families and healthcare professionals navigate dying with confidence and compassion. People don't die like they do in the movies. Understanding what's happening can bring calm when everything feels uncertain. Explore the trusted guides and learning tools from hospice pioneer Barbara Carnes at bkbooks.com.
So the medical equipment, things like that, that's just one of the things that the nurse is doing. The nurse is going to do a pronouncement in most cases, which means to ascertain that the death has actually occurred. And we're not going to get into the regulatory part of that because there are local laws and law enforcement policies in different areas. It just depends on where you live. So your hospice agency should be able to know what's supposed to happen for that. But let's talk about pain medications that are in the home, morphine, etc. How are those managed and what happens to those?
So, and this is a relatively new law. So used to be, we did not have to destroy opioids and those type of medications. It was really kind of left up to the family. We would count them usually, but we just have to keep a record of that because it is a narcotic. But we didn't have to destroy them. Now we do. We have to destroy them because the FDA said that we do now have to destroy them because of the opioid crisis so that we don't have these unmanaged medications out there.
Right.
And so the nurse is going to count the medications and then destroy them. And they're destroyed in different ways. Sometimes they have little packets of things they put the medication in that destroys it. Generally, they're not going to be flushing them down the toilet or pouring them down the sink because we're not supposed to do that.
Correct.
The only thing that's interesting, they do recommend with fentanyl patches because fentanyl is so dangerous that if a patch gets, an animal or a child gets to the patch, it can be deadly. They do recommend we flush those down the toilet.
Which is a little ridiculous because I used to do a lot of rural hospice care. There is no way on God's green earth that anybody would have let me cut those patches into strips and flush them. Nobody wants that in their pipes.
I do a video on that because I'm like, they talk about their septic system, which I don't exactly know what they mean by that.
No,
They're like,
I don't either, but
no.
Nobody's going to let you put strips of fentanyl. It doesn't make any sense to me, but it's not a great system. It's not a great system, and it's a little confusing. A lot of people want to keep medications for one reason or another. Sometimes it's innocent. I take Lasix, so I don't want you to destroy my mom's Lasix, or I take Xanax, so I don't want you to destroy my mom's Xanax. So does the family have the right to refuse medications being destroyed?
Do not when it's a narcotic. Now, on regular medications like a Lasix, I don't think there's anything that governs that, and we generally are not going to destroy those if you don't want us to. Most families are like, yeah, we just want you to get rid of everything. But yeah, we have to destroy the narcotics. Nobody should ever be taking the narcotics out of your home either.
Right. The nurse should not be taking.
Or should not.
The law enforcement should not be taking.
Not. Mm-mm.
Right. Let's be very clear about that.
If that's happening, you need to report that.
Yeah, that's not supposed to be happening. Even law enforcement, they'll say, oh, this is our policy. You can't verify the chain of possession.
Right.
Yeah, it gets dicey. So nurses know how to dispose of the medications. That's the way that's supposed to happen. What about the funeral home? Let's talk about calling a funeral home. Who does that, and when is it supposed to happen?
So the nurse does that. So what's going to happen when your patient has passed, or you believe they have, you call the nurse comes out. We're going to do a very in-depth assessment of the patient. And then if we are not able to ascertain any signs of life, then we will let you know that. And like you said, depending on where you live, state to state, even county to county can be different. We may have to call the coroner, we may not. Sometimes we call the coroner and the coroner actually comes out, but that's pretty rare. A lot of people expect that, but usually that's not going to happen. So there's not going to be police or coroner there. We'll communicate with the coroner. The coroner says, okay, I release the body to the funeral home. And at that point, we're going to call the funeral home. We being the nurse out there is going to call the funeral home. So if you have one already set up, which is ideal, probably the social worker has been working with you on that before the patient passes away. We'll call them, and usually they're out there within about an hour. They usually let us know how long it's going to take for them to come out there, and depending on where you are and depending on how busy they are. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. We spend that time we stay there with the family, hopefully.
Hopefully.
And preparing the patient and all of that for that time. So you don't have to do any of that. Now, if you have not set up with the funeral home, that doesn't mean we can't. We can still call the funeral home, whichever one you want, and work through that process at that time.
Yeah. We don't choose the funeral home for you. That's always the family's right. We will tell you what funeral homes are available in your area, etc. Now, I will say that sometimes there is an extended wait. So if body donation has been done, say to a medical school or some type of facility, sometimes the contracted services that come to get a body are from out of town.
Yes.
So where I live, so I'm outside of Houston, there are transportation services in Houston that support a couple of the medical schools inside Houston proper. Well, that's an hour and a half at least drive over there. And sometimes you may wait as long as 2 or 3 hours, depending on traffic, time of day, where their staff is, etc. But there's nothing that says, okay, the death is done, the person's died, we've ascertained that, and now we got to call the funeral home. It is perfectly acceptable if you're waiting for somebody or you just want to have some time there with your person's body, or if you want to be, as a family or a caregiver, the person who readies them to go, maybe to wash them, or there are religious rites or rituals that you would like to have, spiritual rituals. You are more than welcome to let it go for a while until you are absolutely ready to call the funeral home. Nobody's going to force you. They should not rush you through this.
They should not. And in fact, I usually ask the family before, are y'all ready? Sometimes we have people coming from out of town that want to be there. And so we'll wait.
Yeah.
I had a patient one time that was from Belgium, and it was their custom to bathe the body and dress the body in their wedding clothes and keep them in the home for 24 hours. So I'd never heard of this. So I called the coroner in the town where I lived and asked him if we could do this. And he said, yes, as long as you don't go more than like 24 hours, they probably don't want to do that. So we were able to do that. So I helped bathe him and we dressed him in the wedding clothes. And then I did end up leaving the patient there with his wife because that was just their custom. And then I went back the next day and then we called the funeral home and the funeral home came.
Yeah. Most areas do not have any law about how long a body can stay in the home. Yeah. And so for those folks who are listening who might need information about home funerals or home visitation, that absolutely can be done. It absolutely can be done. There are ways of cooling the environment and keeping the body cool that allow for that kind of extended time in the home. And I would refer you to the National Home Funeral Association or Home Funeral Alliance. Anyway, just if you search online, just Google it. There are guidelines and supports to tell you how to make that successful. But hospice agencies should support that if that's something a family wants to do. Absolutely.
And this is one reason it's so important to communicate with your hospice team, because if you already know you want this and we know ahead of time, we can already have everything in place and have the notes and everything in the record, so we'll know what to expect when we're there too, and be able to support you in the best way we can.
Yeah, nobody gets surprised. And also, if you have a clergy member or a spiritual person that you want to have there when your person dies, we definitely want to help you do that. If there are garments that need to be placed,
Yes.
if you want to, as a family, to wash the body. I know in some cultures that the women of the family come and tend to a body to provide what we call post-mortem care, and to prepare the body. Those garments, prayer shawls, anything like that that is important, that is meaningful for a family, we absolutely can at least facilitate that or be involved in that according to whatever their custom is. But we can certainly make sure that your spiritual leader or community clergy is involved if that's something you want.
Yes. And again, letting your agency know up front ahead of time, always the best thing to do if you have these certain rituals, so that everybody knows what to expect. And during that time, you may not either feel there's a lot going on. There can be a lot of activity going on, and you may be afraid, may not speak up. You have the right to have your rituals and your customs met the way that you want them to.
Yeah.
And so definitely speak up, and doing it ahead of time is even better. So we'll have everyone prepared.
Yeah, if there's something special as far as a spiritual ritual, if your chaplain is aware of that, they can help facilitate getting that person to you or ensuring that the ritual happens, anointing with oil or anything like that that's meaningful. The chaplain can definitely help with that. The most successful death events or deaths in the home that I have seen involve the whole team. And that way, the nurse is providing certain things, the social worker is providing grief support, the chaplain's providing spiritual support. And I mean, I've seen deaths where there are as many as 15 or 20 family members at the bedside. And each one of those people is grieving in a little bit different way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about death inside a GIP unit. When a patient's been inside a facility being managed for crisis, a symptom crisis, and the death occurs there. So for instance, a wing inside a hospital. What does a death look like there?
So it's going to be different. And if you listen to the series on the GIP, you know that you can be in a hospital or you can be in an actual hospice inpatient unit. And it's going to be quite different between those two. So if the person is in a hospital, but in the general inpatient and still on hospice, and they die during that time, the hospital a lot of times is going to follow their own protocol because they have to. And so they're going to do what they do. It'll be similar, but probably a little faster. They may actually even take the body down to the morgue if they have a morgue in the hospital, which most of them do. So it's going to be depending on that hospital's policy. The hospice is still going to be involved, though. So the hospice nurse and probably social worker chaplain, depending on the time of day and who's there, will still be present, hopefully. Sometimes the hospitals forget to call us, and so we don't know about it. But if they didn't call us and your patient's there, you can definitely call us if it's one of your family members, because we will come and be there to support you in the same way that we would in the home.
Right. Even though there are nurses there, the hospice nurse can come. Even though there's a social worker assigned to that floor from the hospital staff, your social worker from your hospice team can come. And the same thing for the chaplain. If there's a hospital chaplain, that doesn't mean your hospice chaplain can't come up there and provide support for you.
Exactly. And we want to, we love you. We have developed relationships with you. We love our patients. We love the family members. We want to be there. So we want to be there with you.
Yeah. And there's more conversation that the hospital staff or the facility staff can't have with you about bereavement care, because letting you know that bereavement care continues for 13 months after the person dies is a responsibility of the hospice team. They should have been doing that before your person began to actively die, to let you know they have that service. But that's not the hospital's responsibility. That's the hospice agency. The team is supposed to let you know somebody from our bereavement care, our bereavement coordinator, or maybe even the chaplain or the social worker will be keeping in touch with you and providing you with grief support for the next 13 months.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can see there's a lot that's supposed to happen when a death call is done very well and very robustly. And it's my hope that whether you're providing the care or giving the care, that you can really envision what a great death looks like. I know that sounds a little crazy, but what great hospice care should look like when the death occurs. So, Shelley, thank you so much for being an expert and sharing all your wisdom. It's been great to have you.
Thank you, Helen. It's been great to be here with you.
Thanks for listening to the Heart of Hospice podcast. Check out our sponsor in the show notes and please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We would appreciate it if you would share this episode with your friends and family and anyone who needs to know more about hospice. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.